always make sure we're mindful and be careful of. Okay? Not every opinion is the truth. Not every opinion is a fact. An opinion, by definition, makes it not a fact. Okay? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the His and Hers The Truth podcast. My name is Twan. And today, guys, we're going to be doing another reaction video to Mr. Andrew Tate, king of toxic masculinity himself. And it looks like he appears on Piers Morgan's show once again. And guys, I'm super excited because I have not seen this video yet. It's fairly new. The title of the video is Andrew Tate Returns to Debate Piers Morgan on Elon Musk and Free Speech. All right, let's go.
Well, joining me now is Andrew Tate, whose videos have been viewed billions of times online, but he's been banned from pretty much every mainstream social media platform, including Twitter. Andrew Tate, welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Your take on this, I think, is quite interesting because you've been a victim of being, if victim's the right word, but you've been removed from social media platforms for your opinions. Elon Musk has dedicated himself, he says, to restoring free speech. Do you think that's going to include you, for example?
I don't think it matters if it includes me or not. I think what's important is that free speech is the number one weapon against absolute tyranny. And although you cannot have complete free speech because then conversations completely break down into asinine insult fests, I do like the idea of the changing of the guard when it comes to control over information.
Is it possible, Andrew Tate, to actually police something like Twitter, to be a platform for genuine free speech? Or is it so toxic and tribal now that whatever happens, you know, before we had all the people on the right screaming away that they were being no platformed and so on. Now you've got all the people on the left screaming that they're being diminished in some way. It's very tribal, very toxic. Can Musk cut through that? And if so, how?
Yeah, okay, it's going to be extremely difficult. There's always going to be one group.
So real quick, guys, a couple of things there. They kind of went on a couple of different topics. But first thing I want to say about the whole free speech thing, 100%, there needs to be free speech. But like Mr. Tate was saying, there is definitely a fine line of what is allowable with free speech, because obviously there's in a conversation or even, let's say, a topic, there's going to be some topics that are like not obviously part of that coverage of free speech, right? For example, the obvious one is like just racial, right? Racial slurs or whatever, insults too, right? Nothing that has to do with like a debate or an open topic of idea or discussion, right? Just hating people or hating things for the sake of hating things. Now, I'm not saying that they should be banned. Let's say, for example, let's say you hate a certain food, we shouldn't be able to like not talk about it. But what I'm trying to say is, like, obviously, if you're just spouting out racial slurs, then, or if you're saying just swear words at somebody, right? I mean, obviously, swear words aren't banned, but once again, like I said, it doesn't really add to the conversation. Like I said, not everything is free, should be covered in that free speech, which I agree. The other thing, too, is, let me see here. Mr. Tate said something kind of interesting about whether he gets banned or not. Obviously he has a certain status, a certain clout that it really doesn't matter to him. He has other platforms. So for someone like himself that he doesn't really care, 100%, he doesn't really, because like he can go to other platforms. Shoot, maybe he gets so rich he can create his own platform. But to the rest of us, it should matter. It really should matter because we don't have that choice. We don't have that opportunity to create that platform. So, if Musk is doing this, and obviously having Twitter being allowed to obviously open that freedom of speech back, that is huge. All right, let's continue.
Of people who are extremely unhappy, but I think that anybody who's perspicacious enough to understand the truth of what's been going on in the world recently will know that the left and their narratives have certainly been protected for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And the universe has swings and balances. And God often restores balance to the universe, and perhaps it might swing the other way for a while. I truthfully am a person who believes that all points of view are extremely important because as soon as you block points of view, you have absolute tyranny.
And in a way, it's sort of self-defeating, isn't it? Because you carried on getting huge attention. It was interesting to me that when you came on the show, for example, we've had, I think, nearly 6 million people have viewed the whole interview that we did, which is a huge number of people, certainly far higher than watched it on conventional television. So you have a whole world out there online which operates away from social media platforms.
Yeah, I've been very, very successful in spite of them, but not many people can do that. I'm in a pretty unique position, but I think that everybody needs a voice to a degree, and social media platforms are now the most important platforms on the planet. They control information and they influence real world decisions, and they influence people's perception of reality. The last few years of COVID have been a perfect example of what happens when you censor one side of the argument and you only allow one point of view to be purported by the matrix in and of itself, and that's how you end up in tyrannical situations. I think you were just discussing that, Piers.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly valid
Let's
point.
pause real quick.
You know,
So one thing I wanted to say, man, Piers Morgan, obviously, he's definitely a pawn of the Matrix. I've said this before, and obviously he's the pawn of the left-wing government narrative. The fact that he's saying now that obviously, some platforms are obviously restricting left-wing talking points. I don't know what he's talking about. Like when has this like left-wing radical, SJW, LGBTQ, all these talking points that we talk about on the RP community all the time, when has it been silenced? I mean, unless you go against their narrative, unless you're a left-wing person and all of a sudden you like start realizing the hypocrisy of it all. So I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about. I mean, Tate called him out on there a little bit, but he didn't call him out 100%. I mean, the other narratives, the other right wing, the other matrices have been way more restricted. And that leads me to a good point, guys. You can see it in live time right now. I've been telling you guys this, for a little bit now, that you can see that the matrices are fighting each other. Right? It's this new left-wing matrix that wants to indoctrinate people with their ideology, is trying to obviously now shut down the old school matrix, right? The religion, the conservative, right? All the things that obviously are a little bit of the old school, quote unquote, old school traditional ideology. And then, like I was just telling you guys, right? I'm glad that Tate obviously recognized it. Yeah, I mean, he's in a unique position. Like I told you guys, he's not going to get stopped because he obviously has the power, the influence, the money to do what he needs to do. So good on him to kind of like recognize that.
People have quite rightly held me to task over some of the positions I took during the COVID pandemic, notably when the scientists said as a definitive fact that you couldn't transmit the virus if you had the vaccine. It turned out that wasn't true. And I based my observations on that supposed fact and said, right, well, in that case, if you refuse to be vaccinated, you shouldn't get the same rights as people who've been vaccinated. If it's true that if you're unjabbed, you can pass it on. It turned out, actually, there's not much difference whether you've been vaccinated or not. And at that point, I changed my mind. But I felt that there were a lot of people who were being deplatformed from Twitter at the time for questioning the validity of scientific statements, and they would then be a complete U-turn. So I do think it was a very interesting period, actually, for testing what free speech means.
It was actually worse than that. You're right, Piers, but it was actually worse than interesting, because what happens is when you censor an entire side of the argument and only allow one side of the argument to have a voice, you are changing reality in real time. You are shaping the world. The only reason that scam continued as long as it did, and the only reason people didn't get to see their own parents get buried, and the only reason people sat and missed cancer appointments because they were scared of the common cold, was because they were censoring anybody who said anything contrary to the purported version of events that the mainstream media decided they want the entire world to swallow. It's beyond simply interesting, and it's beyond simply funny or coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, I will challenge you on one thing. It's not the common cold, right? COVID-19 has killed 6.6 million people. It is one of the most deadly viruses, certainly of our lifetime. So it wasn't the common cold, but I do think it is completely justified for people to say we should be more cautious, I think, about accepting during fast-moving pandemics the word of scientists as being sacrosanct, because on a number of things, from the use of masks to the efficacy of vaccines in preventing transmission, they did massive U-turns.
Let's pause real quick.
I've read
So I didn't realize this video was going to get all political, guys. But real couple of things, Piers Morgan is little cap in here, right? And once again, you're trying to, once again, which narrative do you believe in? Which matrix do you believe in, right? I mean, he's saying that, yes, it wasn't a common cold, 100%. It's like comparing like a freaking one form to another form. You can't call it the same. I totally agree with him there. But to say that it was responsible for 6.6 million lives, guys, we have data out there. This is the whole point. This is the whole conversation, right? When you shut down one side and you can't even question, you can't even freaking ask like, well, you sure that's right? I mean, let's look into it a little bit further, right? Like, hey, I've done my research. Is my research not as valid as your research? Or is it because you're trying to push your narrative? Right. So we all know that the stats for the whole COVID deaths was totally, let's just say, not 100% accurate. OK, I had confirmations during that whole time from healthcare workers that they were literally labeling every death as a COVID death. Right. Meaning that if, let's say, you died from another illness, let it be cancer, let it be whatever, but you also had COVID, they put it as a COVID death. So let's be honest. Let's say that not all of them was that way. But you're trying to tell me that there wasn't a significant number of those deaths that technically weren't COVID deaths. It's just that that person had either one, symptoms of COVID, or two, actually had COVID too. Doesn't mean they died from it. Okay? So like I said, it's which narrative, it's which matrix do you want to believe in, okay?
enough history books to know that the people who do the censoring are never the good guys. And they've been censoring a lot of arguments for a very long time in the name of good. They are weaponizing virtue, and it's always in the name of tyranny. Anybody who is out here trying to silence an entire side of an argument on any subject, whether it's COVID-19, immigration, anything else, they are the evil people who are out for absolute mind control of the populace. And they should be feared.
I certainly agree that I think the healthiest thing for any democracy is for all views to be aired and debated. We seem to have lost the ability to debate. You know, when I interviewed you, yeah, we had a few fractious moments, but actually, I thought it was a pretty spirited debate between people who perhaps had, you know, preconceived views of each other. And I've got no problem interviewing you now about these because I think you have an interesting take on this stuff.
And that's the key to life. When you reach that level of adolescence in your mindset where you can't handle any point of view that is contrary to your own, then you're truly a broken person. And that's what the internet is purporting. It's very interesting you said about Twitter being tribal. There's a large contingent of people on Twitter who simply cannot handle reading an opinion which differs from their own. And that is a degree of immaturity that we do not need adults to be functioning with in the modern world.
No, I agree. If you were Elon Musk, this idea of charging
real quick because
$8,
they're going to go to Elon Musk. But guys, this is the other thing we got to always make sure we're mindful and be careful of. Okay? Not every opinion is the truth. Not every opinion is a fact. An opinion by definition makes it not a fact. Okay? So if someone tells you 2 + 2 = 4, right? That's not an opinion. Right? Now, you can choose not to believe it. That's totally fine. You have the choice to not believe it and live in your delusional reality, right? Like the unrealistic reality. But the reality is still the reality, right? So this is the problem. What happens sometimes when, and like I said, guys, this is the matrix is fighting, and the religious matrix. I didn't really want to get into this whole, conversation of politics and religion, but it does have to pertain with the truth. Is because all these matrices are always trying to mask the truth. And so that's how they'll try to get you, right? The moralistic religion matrix has kind of got us where we're at the current moment, right? Because you get these freaking pretty much dumb-ass concepts as everyone's opinion is the truth, right? Or at least we got to listen to both sides of the thing, even though, it's an opinion. No, there are certain opinions, right? For example, I'll give you guys a 100% truth, okay? and then I'll obviously give you an opinion, right? The truth is, right, the biological kids and the best outcome for your kids. That is our purpose, right? Otherwise, you die, nothing gets passed on, right? Pretty much your DNA, your ancestors' DNA, every person that came before you, is done. Especially, obviously, if you don't have siblings, right? If your mom and dad dies, your brother, sisters, whatever dies, and then you die without having any kids, that bloodline is completely done, right? Now, that is the truth. We can't sit here and be like, well, maybe they decided not to want to do that. It's their choice. Yeah, 100% their choice. But that doesn't make it the truth. It doesn't make it my truth like people all want to say, right? So we got to be very careful when we try to be nice and we try to obviously talk about free speech and the freedom to do this and the choice to do this. Those things are separate issues. I do believe in choice. I believe in the fact that we should have the right to our opinion. But our opinions and our choices doesn't change the truth. Okay? Remember that.
Now a month, whatever it is, to access the blue tick premium Twitter account. Would you do that? Would you pay the extra?
I think that social media companies for a very long time have lived in an absolute fantasy where they've printed money from thin air by charging people for pixels, and they grew into these large conglomerates with too many staff sitting around doing nothing, having coffee breaks. And Elon Musk is a businessman. He's walked into the office and he's firing a bunch of people who are messing around doing nothing, and he wants his business to make money, as it absolutely should. And how he decides that happens is his prerogative. I don't see why we should sit and accept that a website needs 200,000 people sitting around discussing in long meetings, sitting on beanbags about policy of human rights of some garbage, when he's come along and said, no, I'm a businessman. We're going to charge for our service. We're going to reduce the number of staff. And we're going to be a functional, coherent company, as they should be. And it's his prerogative to do it, as he's bought the company. I think he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, because I remember the appalling censorship of the New York Post exclusive about Hunter Biden, the son of the president, about his laptop. This is 3 weeks before the election that Joe Biden won. He was heading, to a possible victory, but it was tight. And that story, they reckon, could have tipped it either way. But it was completely suppressed and censored, starting with Twitter, then Facebook, then others. Twitter literally locked out the New York Post account for 2 weeks for breaking a completely true story. I thought that was shameful.
It's worse than shameful. It's worse than shameful. When you control information, you control the real world. They affect the real world in real time. They are genuinely affecting the reality people live in. They are not just a company. They're not just a social media platform. It affects absolutely every single person on the planet when it changes who is elected. I don't want to comment specifically on Hunter Biden or the laptop. I would never kill myself. But I don't think it's fair that they would hide certain key information that close to an election. And the fact that they've done that was done specifically to affect the world that we all live in. And we all have to suffer the consequences of those things. So to sit and say that these companies can just do whatever they want and they're private, etc. No, free speech is beyond important for democracy. It's important for the reality that we exist under.
Andrew Tate,
all right, let's
thank
pause
you for
this
joining
real
me.
quick.
I appreciate it.
Okay, guys, that was the end of the video anyway. So, yeah, so that is kind of obviously a huge thing where it could cause the different outcome, right, of the reality of the truth, right? And that's why, they always say, if you want to take over a country, if you want to take over society, first thing you got to do is pretty much take over their communications, right? It's the way they relay information. It's the way they relay the ideology. It's really the way to control the people. And that's really what it is. But at the end of the day, too, you can see, too, that ultimately at the end of the day, the truth always matters, wins out, because just like Elon Musk was able to buy this company, it's because they were effing up for so long in terms of their business model. You can't sustain a business model like, doing those policies and procedures that they were doing, right? Overstaffing, paying a bunch of people money that they really weren't doing anything to make the money back. And I get it, though. We're living in a crazy time that influencing is money. I think that's kind of one thing that Tate kind of, he realizes it, but I don't think he unfortunately kind of didn't catch himself there, is because he's a huge influencer. So influencing is a currency now. We all know that. That's how, obviously, Twitter has been able to freaking last this long without making money per se. And obviously it was worth billions of dollars that freaking Elon Musk was only able, one of the only people in this world to be able to afford it, is because that influence that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all these social media platforms have, it is a currency. We're living in a crazy day and age. So how do we equate to that? We're still working out the bugs, as you can see. That's the reason why, Elon Musk was able to buy it off, and then now, obviously put an actual business policy and business structure in place to make it obviously financially successful. But in terms from an influencing and then obviously a net value aspect, it did gain in value. So I think, like I said, sometimes we forget how big influencing as a currency can be. So anyways, guys, that was kind of an okay video. Like I said, I didn't really want to get too super political about it, but like I said, it is a way now that you guys can see how the truth can be masked. You guys can see now how the truth can be altered, or obviously you can get your opinions conflated with the truth. So just kind of be very careful about that. So that was a good learning lesson, I guess, when it came to this video. Talk to you guys later. Bye. Join us as we give you guys a glimpse into our lives, give you guys advice, hopefully give you guys entertainment value as well too, and provide you guys better outcomes.
Yes.